Assalamualaikum to Puan Shahreena. I am Liyana Binti Muhammad Lutpi Taufik and joining me today our analyst team Nur Rabiatul Rahah, Nur Afiqah, Nurfarahanis and Muhammad Hazim. Today we are going to present about currency analysis of Malaysian ringgit currency against US dollar currency. So let's begin. Brief history about Malaysian ringgit currency against US dollar currency. As we all aware, United States or US is one of the largest economy and powerful superpower in the world economy after China. Thus, Malaysia has partnered up with the US as the largest trading partner. Whatever or whenever economic event occur in US have a possibility to fluctuate Malaysian ringgit currency. Now, we are taking you back to the past 3 years of what has occurred in Malaysian currency. In 2017, Malaysia's economy shown a positive growth in GDP, which makes Malaysian currency appreciated. In the previous year of 2016, after a victory of pro-protectionist Donald Trump in the presidential election in the United States, Malaysian currency has depreciated. And once Donald Trump has stepped up as new president of US, Malaysian currency continuously declined as US has withdrew from Trans-Pacific Partnership TPP to reduce or eliminate up to 18,000 tariff on both agricultural and manufactured products, boosting trade, economic growth as well as political ties between 12 countries. This has made Malaysia in hesitation either to leave TPP or not. However, in 2017, TPP was restructured, followed by the increasing of global oil prices. Thus, Malaysian currency becomes stronger. Moving on to 2018, trade war encounters in US and China. In the earlier 2018, President of the US, Donald J. Trump, has imposed tariff and other trade barriers as the US have the most significant trade deficit with China. In the meantime, Malaysia went through the government shifting in general election 2018. Consequently, both of these events has weakened Malaysian ringgit to 4.18 Malaysian ringgit per USD by the end of the October 2018. As for 2019, COVID-19 occurred at the end of the year. This has affected the stock market, where the world main stock market sank to its lowest in a decade as the Wall Street began to drop. As the US is the largest trading partner for Malaysia, Malaysian ringgit aggressively fluctuates and remain uncertain. Now, the real questions are, how are the performance of Malaysian ringgit currency against US dollar currency from 2017 to 2020? Lastly, what are the factors that influence Malaysian ringgit currency against US dollar currency? Thus, I will hand in my presentation to Nurfarahanis to enlighten you more about our finding and analysis. Thank you.
Thank you, Yana. Hi, I am Nurfarahanis and I will be explain about the chart. So, it is a chart of USD dollar to Malaysian ringgit exchange rate. As shown in the chart, USD dollar to Malaysian ringgit exchange rate increased slightly in June 2017, reaching 4.3. Furthermore, the Malaysian ringgit continues to appreciate in May 2018 as shown in the chart. However, we can see the exchange rate between US dollar and Malaysian ringgit depreciated between May 2018 until November 2018, but it is not significant change. In the following 30 months, we can see highly unstable, appreciated and depreciated. However, we can see from the chart that Malaysian ringgit has sharp depreciation begins in January 2020 until May 2020, which is likely due to COVID-19 pandemic. As a result, if we look at US dollar to Malaysian ringgit, between June 2017 until May 2020, we can see that it has depreciated. That's all from me. Next, I will pass to Raha.
Hi, My name is Nur Rabiatul Rahah Binti Fadzlan. Next, we will be discussing about the factors that influence the performance of Malaysian ringgit against US dollar. The first factor is US-China trade war. Before we analyze how this factor influences Malaysian ringgit performance against the US dollar, let's study the importance of these two countries to the world economy. The United States and China are among the top countries that carries a significant impact in the world's economy. As of 2019, a quarter of the global economic output was contributed by the United States, while China at 15% contribution share. The total economic output from these two countries alone accounts to 40% of the global economic output. Since both of these countries have a huge influence on the world economy, a trade dispute between US and China will also upset other smaller economies including Malaysia. Since Malaysia is dependent on the conditions of the global economy to flourish its trade, this uncertainty has heavily impacted the global demand for Malaysian exports. A disruption in export and import activities, for example, a trigger of slowdown in exports, will result in the decrease in current account surplus and causes a fall in exchange rate. As we can see in the chart, the exchange rate has exceeded the 4.00 key level on June 20, 2018 at RM 4.0066 to US dollar as a trade war between China and US broke out. From that point on, there was a consistent increase signaling a weak ringgit against the US dollar. This could be caused by a low export as an effect from the US-China trade war. Other than that, according to Forex Time, FXTM research analysis Lukman Otunuga, the fear of escalating trade war also encouraged investors to pull out their investments in the local currency, causing a capital outflow from emerging markets such as Malaysia. This fear has reduced investors' appetite for risk, but at the same time boosted buying sentiment towards the US dollar as the safe haven currency. This factor, coupled with the political change in Malaysia from the change of government in the 14th general election, has contributed to the depreciation in the local currency's performance over concern on economic policies. However, we can see that on January 20, 2020, ringgit dips to a low of 4.0579 from the news of China and US signing a one-trade deal on 15 January 2020 in attempts to subside the ongoing trade war. This shows that ringgit has become stronger compared to during trade war tension was still high, as investors have once again have the confidence to invest capital in Malaysia. The improved situation of the global trade also helps Malaysian export to get back on track. Fortunately, the situation has also been recently resolved in November 2021 over trade talks and measures made by the new elected US government. Another factor that has impacted the Malaysian ringgit performance is higher interest rates in the US. As there were rising concerns about how Brexit can affect the American economy, a decision for increasing interest rates were made. On 19th December 2018, the American Central Bank has increased rates a quarter of percentage point in the range of 2.25% to 2.5% in hopes to lessen its impact. Even though this shows strength in the US economy, it has plunged the local currency, especially in an emerging market like Malaysia. As we can see in the chart, a day before the announcement of interest hike was released by the US Federal Reserve, the rate for Malaysian ringgit against US dollar was at Malaysian ringgit 4.1772 to US dollar. 3 days after the announcement was made at December 21, 2018, Malaysian ringgit weakened against US dollar by 0.0019 points at Malaysian ringgit 4.1791 against the US dollar. This concludes that ringgit was influenced by US Federal Reserve's decision to increase the interest rate. Since the US Federal Reserve Fund rates acts as a benchmark to interest rate worldwide, it signifies the strength of the USD currency and devalues the Malaysian ringgit, making ringgit less attractive to investors and causing a capital outflow from the country. That's all from me. I will pass the presentation to the next presenter.
Hi, my name is Mohd Hazim, and I would like to explain some possible factors that influence the performance of Malaysian ringgit. One of the factors is new Malaysian political landscape. that made Ringgit Malaysia weak compared to US dollar in May 2018. When Malaysia changed its government for the first time in 60 years, many parties, especially foreign investors, have surprised after Pakatan won the 14th general election. Pressure on Ringgit sales after the election showed that foreign investors resumed their portfolio, indicating that they are worried about the country's political instability in the near future. As the postponing of the mega project, the implementation of the CETA rate GST, and the country debt has exceeded 1 trillion, make investors concerned on the prospect for economic growth and physical position of the country. The elimination of GST without an appropriate compensation fiscal policy will be seen as a credit negative, as it will enhance the government to reliance only on oil earning. Furthermore, the shift would result in a reduction in the government tax base. As a result, the ringgit has declined 1.67% against the US dollar after the general election in 9 May 2018. Second factor that influenced the performance of Malaysian ringgit is world crude oil price. In March 2018, Malaysian ringgit is strong compared to US dollar. The movement of the ringgit has a positive relationship to the crude oil price because Malaysia is the largest oil producer. Therefore, the movement of the ringgit is influenced by how much the member of the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Country, or we call as OPEC, handle the production level of oil. Oil price will eventually rise when OPEC reduce the production and vice versa. Not surprised when crude oil price recovered from $45 in June 2017 to $70 in January 2018. The ringgit reached RM 3.86 per US dollar in 22 January 2018. While other factors weakening the Malaysian ringgit, some of the factors increasing the ringgit currency in April 2018, which is the surprise announcement that the US would start imposing sanctions on Iran. That's combined with the acceleration in the decline of Venezuelan production in 2018. It was the major factor in price of crude oil going above $70 and make the ringgit increase back to 3.86 per US dollar. Furthermore, in March 2020, ringgit is weak compared to US dollar and the graph is upward. Investors continue to assess the impact on the economy by the COVID-19 outbreak, as well as the Saudi Arabia and Russia crude oil price war, raising fear about the extra supply of the commodity. In 2020, the ringgit has also fallen and affected by drop in crude oil price, which are trading at $29.45, the lowest level since January 2016. Further drop in crude oil price are possible because as a COVID-19 outbreak reduced the demand and Saudi Arabia and Russia compete for market control.
The last factor is global dovish. According to IKI global economist Sean Said, the ringgit performed well in 2019. Despite the weak global economic position, trade wars, Brexit negotiation, and geopolitical risks, it reflects investors' strong belief in the national currency, which is MYRM. This has regained investor interest in risky market like Malaysia, where the ringgit and ringgit-based assets are in higher demand in export-oriented economies. Furthermore, the ringgit stability surprised many investors with the local currency appreciated by 0.99% in the first week of February. The US Fed is expected to delay rising interest rate in 2019 and 2020, implying that the central bank is nearing the end of its rate hiking cycle and signs of slowing economic growth in AS. On 21 March, the ringgit hit a year high of 4.0609 against the US dollar, the highest level in the year. Because the US Federal Reserve turned dovish in the first quarter, the Malaysian ringgit appreciated 1.7%. Malaysia increased foreign reserve and the Fed dovish tone are helping to support the local currency. Malaysia foreign exchange reserve increased by $700 million to 121 billion US dollar on 31 January 2019, after declining by $600 million US dollar in December 2018. The rising foreign reserve were likely driven by the continued accumulation of surplus in the current account. As a result, foreign reserve increased this month were due to the current account against a lower portfolio outflow, according to the report. To rise lending rates 4 times that year, it causing investors to float the US bond and fixed income markets in search of higher yields. then ringgit depreciation will fall by 2.7% that year. With the Fed and BNN Bank Negara Malaysia expected to keep interest rates unchanged this year, the ringgit will find support in direction of weaker US dollar. According to Stephen Innes, head of training for the Asia Pacific at Onada Group, the risk-on sign on the Fed dovish stance are complaining, which will benefit commodity and the ringgit Malaysia. Okay, next, what is dovish? Dovish is from the term dove, is commonly used to the United States to describe nomads and members of the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. A dove is an economic policy advisor who like monetary policy that have low interest rates because they think that will help the economy grow. They also say that when the economic growth is better, more people will borrow money, which makes them to spend more money and then will encourage spending. So, don't believe that low interest rates don't give many negative effects. Doves are called dovish if they say that inflation doesn't have many negative effects or they want quantity easy. The problem is that if the interest rates are kept low for the indefinite amount of time, inflation will be raised. There is 3 recommendations to improve performance ringgit Malaysia. First, increase interest rates. Interest rates on bank loans and government bonds will rise in response to rising interest rates. Increased bonds, increased interest rate will attract additional investors with high return. In addition, when the high interest rates to lend attract additional foreign capital due to the exchange rate fluctuation. The inflow of foreign investor or foreign fund will generate demand for a currency ringgit. However, the National Bank cannot raise the interest rates due to the inflation risk. Second is increase export competitive. The term current account refers to the difference between a country's trade balance. This relative value is determined by currency demand, determined by trade. For example, when Malaysia export more than the import, there is a strong demand for its goods and its currency. According to supply and demand economy, when demand is high, price rise and the currency also rise. Therefore, increased export will increase demand for the country's currency. When export exceed import, the amount of money entering the country exceed the amount leaving. It will be lowering the demand for foreign currency. The last recommendation is stability on the politics. Why? Because the foreign investor prefers stable politics and economic environment. Any uncertainty in the country politics climate will cause investors to withdraw their fund and go to other country. When Malaysia politics are stable, investors will return their asset and resume investment and do business activity in the country. When a certain amount of investment brought into the country, the value of national currency, namely the ringgit, increase due to the market mechanism. The ringgit will be used in the investment transaction and other commercial activity. This indicates that the number of ringgit games traded exceeds the ringgit supply. Thus, the ringgit value will be reached against major world currencies such as the US dollar. And that's all from me. Thank you.